You meet someone new. The conversation starts well, maybe even promising. They seem interesting enough, friendly enough, but somewhere between the third sentence and the fifth minute, something inside you quietly shuts off. Not dramatically, not with anger, just a clean, irreversible sense that you're done. And the strange part is, you can't even explain why. They didn't say anything wrong. They didn't offend you. They're perfectly nice. Yet emotionally, you've already left the room, and now you're just performing politeness until you can exit without looking rude. If this feels familiar, you're not broken, you're not cold, and you're not heartless, but you are psychologically revealing. Most people misunderstand this trait. They assume it means you're picky, emotionally unavailable, arrogant, or impossible to please. But what if that's not true at all? What if the speed at which you lose interest in people isn't a personality flaw, but a defense mechanism, one so refined and automatic that you don't even notice it activating? What if your brain has quietly built a sorting system shaped by past disappointment, emotional pattern recognition, and a deep need for something most people simply don't offer? The truth is, you don't lose interest because you don't care about connection. You lose interest because you care too much to fake it. Psychologically, this often starts with something called the expectation-reality gap. When you meet someone, your brain immediately starts running predictions. How deep can this go? How alive is this person mentally and emotionally? Will they surprise me, or just confirm everything I already know about people? You're not consciously doing this, it happens beneath awareness. You're scanning for curiosity, emotional range, originality, presence, and the moment your mind realizes the conversation is stuck on scripts, small talk, recycled opinions, safe topics, borrowed personalities, it quietly disengages. Nothing is technically wrong with those conversations, but your nervous system registers them as predictable, shallow, and mentally undernourishing. For you, safe often translates to boring, not because you're superior, but because your brain craves stimulation, meaning, and signal instead of noise. When it doesn't find it, dopamine drops, attention fades, and interest collapses. You're not rejecting the person, you're rejecting the script they're running. This wiring usually doesn't appear out of nowhere. It often traces back to childhood. Picture being young and trying to explain something that genuinely mattered to you, a question, an observation, a feeling, and watching the adult in front of you nod politely, smile, then change the subject or check their phone. It doesn't happen once, it happens repeatedly, slowly, quietly. You learn a painful lesson. Most people don't actually listen, they wait for their turn to talk. Most people don't go deep, they stay on the surface because it's safer. Some kids adapt to this easily. Others, the observant, sensitive, curious ones, feel something break, not loudly, silently. You start noticing how quickly people disengage from depth, how uncomfortable they become when conversations move beyond the familiar. So you start testing people early, watching how long it takes before they dismiss your intensity, your questions, your inner world. Over time, you build a filter. If someone can't meet you at a certain depth, you stop trying. Not because you're cruel, but because trying with the wrong people taught you that emotional effort without resonance is exhausting and lonely. As an adult, that filter runs instantly, faster than thought. You meet someone, and your brain scans for depth, curiosity, presence. If it doesn't find it within minutes, the door closes. This isn't you being difficult, it's you protecting the part of yourself that got tired of being misunderstood. But there's another layer beneath this, one that's harder to admit. The reason you lose interest in people so quickly isn't only about them being shallow. It's also about a fear you carry quietly, the fear of becoming ordinary yourself. When someone talks only about routines, surface-level goals, safe opinions, your mind doesn't just disengage, it recoils. Because they mirror a future you're terrified of, a life lived on autopilot, a version of yourself that stopped questioning, stopped feeling deeply, stopped being awake. Psychologically, this is projection anxiety. You're not just rejecting them, you're rejecting the life they represent. That's why this trait feels so intense. It's not about manners or patience, it's existential. You need people around you who remind you that depth is possible, that curiosity survives adulthood, that life can be more than maintenance and distraction. When someone doesn't offer that, your nervous system treats them like a threat, not to your safety, but to your aliveness. And because of that, control becomes important. Losing interest quickly keeps you in power. If you disengage first, you never have to risk being the one left behind. You never have to feel the quiet humiliation of someone else deciding you're not enough. This is why this trait often overlaps with avoidant attachment, not always because you fear intimacy, but because you've learned that closeness without depth leads to disappointment. You've been there before. You've invested emotional energy into people who turned out to be performances, people who sounded deep but were just good at sounding that way. So your brain learned efficiency. It doesn't wait for disappointment anymore. It predicts it. Here's the twist most people miss. This isn't always a weakness. In many cases, it's a form of intelligence. Research in psychology shows that people with high cognitive complexity often struggle with surface-level interaction. Their brains are wired to detect check patterns, nuance, and meaning. They filter aggressively because they feel deeply. They don't have unlimited emotional energy to spend on hollow connections. You're not being picky. You're being selective because you know what real connection feels like and you refuse to substitute it with performance. This isn't emotional unavailability. It's emotional standards. But there's a tension here you can't ignore. Sometimes, the problem really is other people. They're checked out, emotionally flat, mentally disengaged. And sometimes, the problem is that your bar has become a fortress, so high that no one can reach it without risking vulnerability, yours included. Their boring can become a shield, a way to avoid being seen. Because real connection isn't just about depth, it's about risk. Letting someone disappoint you slowly, instead of dismissing them quickly. Letting imperfection exist without closing the door immediately. If you instantly lose interest in most people, you're not cold. You're someone who knows the difference between connection and performance, between depth and decoration. Yes, it can make life lonelier, but it also makes the connections you do keep rare, meaningful, and real. So the next time you feel that internal click, that quiet emotional shutdown, don't judge yourself for it. Just ask one honest question. Is this wisdom speaking, or is this protection pretending to be wisdom? Because sometimes, it's both.